Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the 13th episode of the RK Leadership Podcast, where we help empower tomorrow's leaders through the sharing of knowledge, experience, and inspiring stories. My name is Rob Cameronpour, and my special guest today is Emily Fredette, who is a manager from the Mansfield Canadian Rail. I'll let Emily introduce herself shortly and talk about, give us a little bit about background of how she got to where she is today. But before we do that, I'd like to thank you, Emily, for joining on my podcast this afternoon. And thank you for your time. And I hope that, the audience will learn a great deal from you. So without further ado, please introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your background and how you got to where you are today.
Well, thank you, Rob, for that. That's really kind. My name is Emily Fredette. I am a manager over at Mansfield Canadian Rail. I got there in a really interesting way. I am not the typical leader there. I don't have any technical background in the railway industry. I actually came from medicine. So I started my career really young. I started working at a walk-in clinic when I was roughly 17, where I developed my leadership skills and my business acumen, which was a great experience and really helped round who I am today. And through growing and learning and grasping at every opportunity that I could, I ended up working for an optometrist. I worked as a substitute teacher. I worked in a cardiology center, and then finally I ended up over at Mansfield Canadian Rail, where I got to embark on this journey as a non-technical leader in a technical field.
Nice, excellent. And that's a great story. And I want to dive right in, Emily, and talk about the first thing I want to ask you, or I want you to talk about, is what made you transition from that non-technical world, and what made you get into more of the technical world as where you are today?
I actually owe the credit to my last job. I was working at a cardiology center here in town, and I just didn't enjoy what I was doing anymore. I found myself not inspired to fulfill my role there. I wasn't really engaged in my work, and so I decided to apply. And just due to where we are located, it is a vast technical field. Here we have the mining industry, we have a lot of construction companies, the railway industry. So I just dove headfirst and I applied, and someone took a chance on me. But it's been a transition, because I, of course, don't have the technical expertise that the people that I'm leading do. So it's been a journey.
Absolutely. And, I personally think, and, having known Emily for the past 3 months, I think, you're a phenomenal leader, and you've got a great head on your shoulder, and, you're going far in from that sense. I wanted to ask you, from being a leader and being in a leadership role, what's your unconventional definition of leadership?
I'm not sure that it's so unconventional, but I really do believe that leaders should be inspiring, that leaders should empower you within your role. And I don't believe that you need to be a technical person to do that. I really think that I can drive just as much engagement as someone who does have that technical background. So for me, it's all about the people. It's about getting there, allowing them to teach me things every day, because they have that knowledge that I don't have. And by doing that, I'm helping build their engagement. I'm getting involved. And really, to me, that's what being a leader is all about.
Awesome. So let's dive into that a little bit. That is a controversial topic, if I can say the least, and I've had to deal with it over the 15 years plus, being in a certain industry, in the technical industry. I would say there's a lot of people who argue that you do have to have that, technical competency to lead technical people. I, for one, disagree with that, because to me, you don't have to be the subject matter expert. You've got the people below you who are subject matter experts. Now, how has your role been in terms of, from a difficulty perspective, dealing with more technical people? Why would you say that you don't require a technical background to lead technical people?
That is just such an interesting thing to bring up, because I think that it actually drives more engagement because that I'm not technical. I can get people involved in pretty much everything that I'm doing, which makes that my team is incredibly knowledgeable about our business as a whole, because I don't know the technical skills. So if I'm writing that contract, I need to involve the guys on the floor to make sure that I'm putting what needs to be put down. And that really builds our connection. It changed our culture. And in my opinion, it really helped them understand our business and understand what their impact is, which if they understand their impact, they're involved, their engagement is high, we're doing better. They're bringing me ideas. They're helping me. And I really, really think that that is what it's all about. It's about getting them involved. And I think it's almost an extra tool in my tool belt, because I don't know. So I'm asking questions constantly. I've got guys coming to me telling me how things should be done. They're bringing new ideas. And I think to me, it's a superpower, because I'm not there to actually work on the locomotive. I would be useless. I'm there to help the business, and drive the people. And that's what I do by not being a technical person.
You got it. And that to me is the exact same idea. As a people leader, you're leading people. You're not leading the work. You're not doing the work. You're actually enabling and empowering your team, and you're creating that engagement, that has a huge impact on the bottom line. So that's a great answer, Emily, and I appreciate you talking about that. We will get into the engagement piece a little bit later. I wanted to ask you, why do you enjoy being a leader? What was it about leadership that you enjoyed, and why do you enjoy what you're doing today?
I honestly think that I fell into leadership just because of who I am. I don't think that my title makes me a leader. I honestly believe that in any role that I would be in, I would fall into leadership, whether that be with a team or in a role. I fall into it. And what really caught me once I started moving up the ladder and kind of getting a more true leadership role was my ability to empower people. It was my ability to get people going and happy to be at work.
Yeah.
We all have to go to work. Why not be excited to do it? Why not be engaged with what you're doing? And I really feel like that was what was the hook, line, and sinker for me. Once I saw the impact that I could have on others, I just loved it. And I think that because I'm not that technical leader, it really allows me to dive into that and help the technical people enjoy what they do.
Awesome. So I'm going to ask you the $1 million question. And you said, your natural abilities of leadership and, getting people to kind of follow you and follow your lead, etc. How do you do it? What is your, secret recipe to success that others in those leadership roles fail to do and fail to achieve that engagement in their teams?
Oh, there's so many things. I think my style of leadership versus historic leadership is very, very different. But the one big thing that I do is that I trust my people. I think that is so important. And when you empower people with trust, they then feel more engaged. They want to try new things. They're more intuitive to what's around them, right? So I 100% go into a role trusting that my technical people know what they're doing. And I trust that they're going to let me know when there's things that are wrong, that they're going to communicate with me. But in the same hand, it is so important as a leader that we're constantly communicating with our team. We're communicating our expectations. We're communicating what's going on, driving that communication and issuing the first trust. So I always trust my team and I work to gain their trust. And I think that's the fundamental difference. When you have leaders that go into a role and they don't issue that trust, and they tend to micromanage their team, they kind of hover over the shoulder. They are constantly watching what everyone is doing, and they're not empowering their people to really fulfill their role, to be the best person they can be within their role. So I think that's my take on leadership. That's the one thing that I do really differently than anyone else that I've met.
I love it. Thank you for sharing that. Now, I want you to share with us if there was somebody that was new to a leadership role, or they were going into their first leadership role. Now, trust is the key word in leadership. It's very important in every aspect of not only leadership, in every sort of relationship, I would say. How do you build trust with your team as a new manager?
That's a really good question. I think honestly, it depends on the individuals that you're dealing with. I've been really fortunate. I haven't had any really sour eggs on my teams. But I think it's about getting involved and getting to know what they're doing. I remember I had one individual that was a little bit reluctant to get me in on their team. They didn't exactly see me being their leader on the day that I walked in. And I sat with this individual for a little bit, and I talked to them. I got to know them as a person. I got to know what they actually did for the company and what drove them to come to work. And by just having that transparency, showing them that I'm a human, they can be human around me, we were able to then build that trust, which now I absolutely adore working with this individual. We have a great relationship. Our chemistry is great. But it's because I got to know what their impact on the company was, what got them in the chair there, what drives them to come to work. And for in my experience, that was a great stepping stone to building that trust.
Awesome. And what do you do to ensure that you sustain that trust with your team?
I believe that it's a lot of communication. It's about talking with your team. It's about making sure that you know what's going on. You know what's going on in their lives. You can understand the other inputs that aren't directly related to work. And that's what continues to sustain that trust. Because if I can remember that, hey, Rob, you've got this going on, you automatically feel more connected to me. You'll automatically feel like I'm a trusted individual. In my opinion, anyways.
Absolutely. That's great. And I think those are some key takeaways for people, like I said, again, new to leadership roles, or even in leadership roles that are having tough time, building that trust with their team. It's so vital. It's such an important piece of leadership. So thank you for sharing that, Emily. Now, one topic I wanted to dive into right now, and again, this is something I've personally dealt with over the 13-year career I had in the utility world, where it's a male-dominated industry, and you now have female leaders kind of coming up and taking certain leadership roles, which is fantastic, and I love to see that. How was your experience in terms of being a leader in a male-dominated industry? I want to hear your take on that.
It was an interesting transition. So, like I said, I came from medicine, and I really had no idea what the trades were all about. I didn't know what to expect. I didn't know what the culture was. I didn't really know anything. And so when I first came into the role, there was a little bit of discomfort at some times. It wasn't always as organic, and it wasn't always as, trying to find the correct term. It was just uncomfortable sometimes. But as I've grown and I've come to understand the industry, I really got to know that I just had to be myself. I just had to come in and I had to be genuine. When I didn't know something, there was no pretending that I knew what was going on, because I didn't know. And by just being honest and open about my actual knowledge, I was able to leverage their knowledge, and that was the key. It was about making sure that they knew that they could tell me things and teach me things. And that really was the way to get in with the boys. Allowing them to teach me things really made them feel good. And that was a big stepping stone for me, is just getting them to want to teach me things and getting them to realize that I'm not just some corporate girl sitting in the high ivory tower, that I can get down there and I can learn with you and I can be there for the team. That was the big one, the big turning point. And then from that point on, it was about understanding their needs and making sure that I was meeting their needs and taking care of them while also taking care of the business. So, sorry.
Awesome. No worries. So in terms of like I said, at the beginning, starting in that role, what other adjustments did you feel like you had to make in order to, I don't want to say fit in, but I want to say, have that alignment in terms of being a reputable leader in that industry?
It's tricky because I don't think I actually had to change anything about myself. I just had to start being myself. Which sounds really strange when I say it that way, but especially from the industry that I came from, it was very posh. You always had to be proper, you always had to be a certain way, and the boys just don't appreciate that when you're out in the field. And if you show up to an audit and you're wearing, I don't know, Gucci shoes, they're not going to look at you the right way. So it's about coming down to my roots and like understanding who I was as a person so that I could be authentic with them. It was about having a joke over a coffee. It wasn't about changing anything about me. It was about just being who I am and asking the questions.
Awesome. Now let's get into the fear part. So now you're a young professional coming in this male dominant industry. Did you have any fear in your mind when coming in, and how did you overcome those fears?
I had so many fears. I was scared of everything. I was scared because for the first time in my life, I was not going to know everything. In fact, I was going to know the least. But it gave me the opportunity to learn. It gave me the opportunity to engage with people I would have never otherwise engaged with. It gave me so many blessings in disguise. I absolutely dread not being the most knowledgeable person. I like to feel knowledge is power in my books, and I like to feel that way. But I guess I had to shift a little bit. I had to understand my limitations, especially as a leader. When you're a leader and you don't know things, that's scary because you've got to make decisions. You've got to be in charge. And when you don't know, that's really scary. And I think that was, for me, the biggest challenge. But like I said, so many blessings because I had the opportunity to learn and empower myself to expand on the things that I did know. And what I do know is how to be a good leader. I know how to make you feel good about your job. I know how to make decisions, and I know how to drive change. And because I didn't know all the technical stuff, I really got to concentrate on the things that I did know. And I got to make sure that I surrounded myself with good people who knew the technical things so that I could help us all move up.
Awesome. And I think that plays such an important role in terms of building trust, is that vulnerability to say, hey, I might be your leader, but doesn't mean I know everything. And this is why, we have various subject matter experts. Then you count on your team and you ask them, for feedback, and you ask them for guidance. And that's how you start building relationships with people within your team and create that engagement. So excellent. That's a great point. And that's part that goes with the adjustments as well. So now that you've been in this industry for few years now, at least, what would your advice be to the young women out there that have that fear or are hesitant to apply for a leadership role because maybe they don't have that technical background, or they don't want to apply to a male dominant industry to say, hey, you're going to go in there and uh, you're just going to be criticized and treated differently.
I think fear is the thing that kills all opportunity. You have to put that aside. I wish somebody would have said that to me, because I would have shifted over to the trades a long time ago, and I would have stepped into the leadership role that I actually wanted to have if someone would have just told me to let that fear go. If you're able to be yourself, if you're able to be confident in yourself and put yourself out there, it'll go fine, because you're going to end up exactly where you're meant to be. Fear is, in this situation, is 100% your enemy, and you have to let it go, because those men that you're so scared to talk to are just people too. If you can empower yourself to take that step, you first of all step through the door, which I'm sure they're going to give you kudos for that one, because it is scary. And then you present yourself in a confident way, and you show that you have merit to be there. They will accept you. You have to be authentic. When you start to try to hide who you are, or you let fear guide you, that is when they'll take advantage of you, when they'll kind of shove you off to the side because they won't think that you really belong. Just be true to yourself, push the fear aside, take the leap, and go. I honestly wish somebody would have said it to me sooner, because I absolutely love this industry and I love what I do. And I couldn't ask for a better group of people to work with.
Awesome. That's fantastic. And, this is exactly, one of the points of having these podcasts and spreading it over to a wider audience is because you went through a certain, a certain situation. And in order for other people to avoid that situation and learn from it, that's exactly what this is. We want to spread that knowledge so people can see you and say, hey, I'm just like her.
Yeah.
And if she can do it, maybe I can do it. And if anything, why don't I reach out to her and get some tips and insights and talk to her? Maybe build that self-confidence. And that's a great segue into the next topic I want to talk about is one of the things I always say is you have to be able to lead yourself before you can lead others, right? Now, again, how have you done that in terms of leadership, whether it's leadership or just in any parts of our life? My belief is we constantly have to work on ourselves. Now, what have you been doing in terms of working on yourself as a leader, and what aspects are you trying to hone in on, in terms of becoming better as you move up that ladder?
So I've done so many things at this point. I think the pivotal point for me was when I was sitting in my office one day, and a new leader had come on to the team, a new VP, and he came into my office, and he started talking to me and started engaging with me and asking me what I did. And about a week later, I got a notice that I was getting shifted off to his team. And he made me feel empowered. He made me feel like I had merit to be there. He made me feel more engaged than I had ever been with my work. And I decided that I needed to make some changes. I needed to change my life a little bit so that I could be the best person that I am, and I could put that out into the world. And so slowly but surely, I started changing my life. I started doing little things that made me happy and made me a better person. And of course, about 3 months ago or so, something like that, he came into my office again, and he said, well, I've got this opportunity, and I'd like you to embark on that. And that's how I met Rob. And through this journey, I still remember the day that he told me. I was just about at the tipping point of my life. I was leaving a messy relationship. I was leaving my home. I was changing the very last things in my life so that I could be the best person that I could be. And I started taking your sessions, and we started chatting, and I've been able to gear my life to really drive the fulfillment and to be myself and to feel good about myself and empower my confidence. And it sounds strange, but once I was able to get myself under control and to make sure that I was who I wanted to be, I was able to put that into the world, which really drove my leadership. I could not tell you the immense change there has been, and the people around me, my engagement with my team at work, even my contacts, the relationships that I'm building are far deeper than they've ever been. And I really think that that's something that's been missing in a lot of the businesses that I've been in, because I haven't built those deep connections. And through empowering myself, I've been able to sustain such amazing relationships with my people, with other companies, and even the people in my personal life. It's been an incredible journey, and I really think that that's what I was needing to make sure that I was the best leader that I could be.
Awesome. And you've still got a long way to go, and one step at a time, but you're on the right track for sure. And like I've always said, you've got great potential in front of you, and just do what you're doing best. Now, in terms of that, building that self-leadership, how important is strengthening your mindset, Emily?
So for me, it was something that's happened over time. I still remember my boss coming into my office one day, and he was like, "You know who you are." And I believed him. I fully believed him that I knew who I was, and that I was strong-minded, and that I knew what I wanted out of life. But I think we need to having good mindset doesn't mean you have to stop growing. If you stunt your growth, then you're going to have a limited mindset. And I firmly believe that you need to gather up who you are, figure out what your mindset is going to be, and continue to build off of that. Continue to grow, continue to try to learn more about yourself. I'm learning new things about myself every day. I'm sure everyone is, but it's so important. And if you continue to do that, you'll continue to develop such a great mindset, and you'll be able to feel more empowered, not just at work, but in yourself, and whatever it is that drives you and pushes you forward. And so that mindset is something that needs to be ever growing. It's not just about having it. It's about pushing it forward and driving it.
So what would you recommend people to do? Again, people are stuck in a, let's say, a growth stunt where they can't figure things out. They can't make certain decisions. And, as a leader, you got to be able to make decisions. What do you do? And what advice would you give people or leaders out in the world about building or, strengthening that mindset?
Take a step back.
Mm-hmm.
Perspective is absolutely everything. And once you take that step back and you evaluate what's going on, you'll see that the answer is usually not that hard. I actually find that I like to take a step back. I like to have a sounding board. My friends and I, we do this thing whenever something is overwhelming, when it's hard to make that decision, but we know that you always know the answer with it. Usually it's there. We call each other. So no matter what, I take a step back from a situation. I'll give a girlfriend a call, just kind of talk it out. She doesn't say anything. It's not intended to be a two-way conversation. She doesn't say anything. It's almost like a verbal journal. And by the end of the conversation, once you've got all of it out, you've said your piece, the decision usually comes easier. But it's all about perspective. So sometimes you need to take that step back just to have a different visual perspective. But sometimes taking that step back and also making the phone call changes your mental perspective, because putting the words into reality takes them out of your head.
Yes.
Because that's where they get kind of mixed up. You're shuffling the deck too much, and just being able to broadcast what you're thinking will change the way you're going to respond to it. And I find I always make the best decisions after just having spoken about it.
So does that mean, is that something you would do if if you're an overthinker? Let's say somebody that's an overthinker, they constantly, they're in their own heads, coming up with like 8,000 scenarios. Is that the advice you would give somebody that's an overthinker as well?
100%. If you are overthinking, it is about getting it out. Of course, journaling is also very powerful in that sense. I know we've had plenty of discussions about that. And I find that it's most helpful when I'm overthinking the things within. When I'm overthinking what is driving me to go to work. When I'm overthinking, gosh, what am I supposed to do this weekend? So-and-so has got this going on. I should be going there. I've got this report, whatever it is. When you're overthinking things in your head a little bit too much, journaling can be a powerful tool, but that verbal journal puts it out into the world.
Nice.
And not only when you're talking to your friend and you're saying like, oh, this is going on, I've got to choose, do I do this? I do this. I'm choosing to do X, Y, or Z. I've also verbalized it. Now it's actuality. Now I have to fulfill this because I've said it out loud, and I find that helps drive my commitment to it. So if I'm going to make a commitment to, I don't know, work out every single day for 45 minutes, I've made that commitment out loud, and now I have to see it through. And I think that is just so empowering and pushes me to do it. And of course, that's all about having a great support system.
Yes.
That can actually hold you accountable to it and remind you that you did say these things. And I think that that's just absolutely excellent.
That's right. And that's, going back to the 4 agreements, be impeccable with your word. And that's how you absolutely build discipline, is if you can actually, follow through with what you're going to say and hold yourself accountable for that. So
Yeah.
Excellent. Now, again, we talk about mindset and building that mindset, strengthening mindset. Talk to us about self-awareness. Now, having that self-awareness is super important, as not as a leader, but as an individual. How do you go about to become self-aware of yourself?
I think the big driving factor for me was just paying attention. I think we end up in this fog where, or the drunken party, that was the expression in the book that I'd read. But we end up in a fog, a daze, and we're not looking at what's around us. It's about taking a second and just actually feel your body, understand who you, like where you're sitting, be present, and see what's around you. I really think that that's the first step of self-awareness. And when you can be aware of your surroundings, you can then start to reflect deeper within self-awareness.
Awesome. And again, what sort of habits would you build around that to get in tune with yourself and make that consistent? Whereas, you catch yourself being self-aware once in a while, and then, you lose it. What kind of habits do you kind of try to build?
So my first habit, I think I built for self-awareness was I was a chronic negative thinker. I mean, everything I could possibly think of was negative. I was thinking negatively towards myself, towards what was around me, anything, any opportunity to be negative, my brain sucked it right up. And my first habit I built was that anytime I would think of anything that was negative, I would immediately distract myself. And I think that was a first of all, it was a doozy. I didn't realize how many times I was going to actively think negatively until I started actually physically changing what I was doing when I was thinking. So that was it was life altering a little bit, because I was constantly just shifting from task to task to task, because I kept catching myself. But the more that I kept catching myself thinking negatively, the more I became aware of my thoughts, the more I became in control of my thoughts. And once I was able to control my thoughts, slowly that faded away. And slowly I didn't have to do that anymore. I didn't have to constantly be shifting gears or changing my perspective in order to not be in a negative thought. But that was, I think once I was able to master that habit, I was able to bring on so many good habits that really helped change my mindset into a more positive mindset, and a more a mindset that would really actually help me move forward. It wasn't because negativity just holds you back. It's that fear that's not letting you apply for the job. It's that fear that's that anxiety that's not letting you go out and do whatever it is you want to do. Those are the negative thoughts that are consuming you, which are not allowing you to see the world for what it is, because it's a great place out here, full of opportunities. And changing your mindset, becoming self-aware, these are all the things that help you get to where you want to be.
Absolutely. And it removes your, the self-limiting beliefs that you have in your head, and building confidence. I think that's an important piece too, in terms of building confidence. And I think, you nailed it with a lot of those pieces. Now, as a leader too, again, having that self-awareness also kind of works hand in hand with the emotional aspect of things. How are you able to kind of control your emotions as a leader when, let's say you have a bad apple on the team, or you have to have those difficult conversations, right? How do you deal with difficult conversations without letting those emotions come out?
So I think difficult conversations was my biggest fear. I was scared of sitting in a room and someone having an emotional response to what I was going to be saying, and I wouldn't know how to react, or I would start having an emotional response. What if they yell at me? Am I going to yell back? But by first understanding where these emotions are coming from, for me, that was so important, to look inside and see, like, why is this uncomfortable for me? Or why do I feel this way? And understanding where they're rooted, I'm able to then control what I'm putting out. So, for example, if no one likes being yelled at, we don't like being yelled at, that doesn't feel good inside. I understand that in me, X, Y, or Z. It just doesn't make me feel good. But instead of yelling back and triggering another emotional response within somebody else, I think it's important that we acknowledge that we have that feeling. Yes. We set it aside and we move forward and we put out what we want. It's much harder to yell at someone if they're being calm, cool, and collected.
Yes, that's it.
So for me, it was all about identifying where these emotions were coming from. And if the emotion wasn't serving me and it wasn't going to be bettering the conversation, I can set it aside, because it can be as simple as me saying, "Hey, Rob, I don't like it when you talk to me that way. Come back to me when you're ready to talk." It can be so simple. It's about not engaging in those emotions. This is a place of business. We have to be professional. We have to be able to hold ourselves high. And the people on your team will respect you a lot more if you can set those emotions aside and present your best self, because that allows them to bring out the best in themselves. Nobody wants to be yelling at you. Nobody wants to be mistreating you. Nobody wants to cry at work. These are not things that people want. These are very negative emotions that nobody wants to be doing, especially in a professional environment. And by not issuing that emotional response, you empower them to do the same. You allow them actually to be themselves and to be their best selves, and you create a safe and open space where people can engage with you without feeling negative, without bringing all their emotional baggage. And I think that is so empowering. And it's an incredible tool as a leader.
Absolutely. I think, again, you nailed it, because it's such an important aspect of leadership, and you're always going to have those, uncomfortable or difficult conversations with certain members of your staff, and knowing how to deal with people. Again, you're a people leader. If you don't know how to deal with emotional beings, I think it's hard to succeed as a leader, right?
You won't succeed as a leader if you can't deal with emotional people. It is just the reality. We're going to hold uncomfortable conversations. It's not always fun being a leader. It's not all it's cracked up to be, and it's not just fancy dinners and I don't even know. Like it's not just a ball. It's about being able to drive the decisions, being able to make changes, and you're going to have uncomfortable conversations because nobody likes change. Nobody likes people coming in and telling them that they can't do certain things. So you're going to end up having that uncomfortable conversation. And if you can't understand their feelings, understand where it's coming from, understand your own, it's going to be an uncomfortable leadership. It's not going to go well.
For sure. And what you're doing at work, and what people got to understand as a leader, is you're also impacting their life outside of work as well. So that's a huge ordeal. And that is why it's so important for people to be kind leaders. And my thing is, you lead with love, because we've got enough hate in this world. We've got enough negativity. People should feel safe when they come to work and have that safe environment, and go home and transfer that positive energy into their families, their kids, or whatever it may be. So that's an excellent point. And I appreciate you talking about that and going into that detail with it. Now, the last thing I wanted to talk to you about is, or I want to get your input on, is you're a leader at work. You have that leadership title, or I don't even want to say title. So you have those responsibilities as a leader. How do you take that, and how do you apply those leadership aspects outside of work? So in your personal day-to-day life, do you leave that hat on in the corporate world, or are you constantly being that leader outside in your community and your personal life as well?
I think it's funny, and it might just be because of my own perspective a little bit on that one. So I am a leader at work, and I'm a leader in my personal life because I'm actively, continuously leading myself. I'm leading my own journey, and I'm moving forward. But for me, it was incredibly difficult to distinguish the two because I didn't see myself as a leader at home. I didn't understand that I was still actively a leader. I felt as though I was an imposter at work. I was an imposter at home. And it was about identifying the different roles of leadership. So at work, I understand I'm a leader. I wear a little bit of a different hat because I sit in that office, and at the end of the day, I'm the one responsible, right? But when I come home, I'm responsible for my life. I'm responsible for what I'm doing, and I'm leading myself. And I think that was the key takeaway there. It was something that I needed to acknowledge, that I am still actively a leader. And I'm a leader today because I've led myself to that path. I led myself to hold that role. And I think that for me, it was so important to acknowledge that I have these two roles of leadership, and they do merge together, and they make who I am. It's not to say that I don't sit at home sometimes and decompress. I'm not, but it's a different type of leadership when I'm at home versus when I'm at work.
Awesome. Excellent. And that's exactly what it is, because at the end of the day, you're still a human being too. And, you do need that time to decompress and recharge your batteries and kind of just relax and do nothing. So that's fantastic. Emily, I want to, again, thank you very much for taking time today to speak with me. And for those out there, for the young leaders out there, are you open to, taking on some people from a mentorship perspective?
Yes. So I've actually started putting together my own little program for a few of my friends who have reached out to me at this point.
Nice.
And of course, my team. So I am always open to mentorship, conversation, anything of this sort. I really want to make sure that I'm driving an impact as well. And I think that I have some some positive things that I can share with people along their journey to leadership, or even just a transition to the technical field, I think I can really I can drive some positive change in certain individuals. So, of course.
Awesome, thank you. And I will leave Emily's information in the description below. So if you guys need to get a hold of Emily, or if you have any questions for her, please feel free to do so. And again, thank you very much, Emily. Thank you, everyone, for joining the 13th episode of the RK Leadership Podcast. And we'll definitely see you at a later date. Take care, everybody.
Thank you.